What happened to Castlevania? One of Konami's biggest IPs, the Castlevania franchise hasn't seen a proper mainline game in over a decade. The last major release was Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 back in 2014. And if we're talking about traditional 2D entries, you'd have to go back even further to Order of Ecclesia, which released in 2008, nearly 17 years ago. This is a series with almost 40 years of history. The NES originals defined precise platforming and brutal difficulty. Super Castlevania 4 and Rondo of Blood delivered gothic visuals and an atmosphere like nothing else at the time. And Castlevania Symphony of the Night, along with Super Metroid, completely reshaped the platforming formula. Together, these two games basically created a genre we now call the Metroidvania. What made Castlevania unforgettable wasn't just its history, but how it felt to play. Every jump and every whip strike demanded precision. The bosses were relentless, and clearing a stage brought a real sense of accomplishment after pushing yourself through its tricky level design and very intentional enemy placement. Castlevania 2 experimented early on with an open-ended gameplay, and Castlevania 3 introduced multiple characters and branching paths. 1998's Symphony of the Night transformed the series into sprawling labyrinths filled with secrets, items, and alternate routes. Later handheld entries continued that legacy, rewarding curiosity just as much as skill. And of course, there's the music. My god! Tracks like Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, and Dracula's Castle are some of the most iconic pieces in all of gaming, perfectly blending that gothic atmosphere with an energy to push you forward. Some of my personal favorites are Lost Painting from Symphony of the Night, and Crossfire from Rondo of Blood. Maybe not as recognizable, but some of the most beautiful pieces of music I've actually ever heard, and I find myself listening to them while working quite often. It's a soundtrack that still gets remixed and celebrated to this day, and it helped give Castlevania its unmistakable identity. But the series' identity wasn't only in its gameplay and music, it was in its look. From the late 90s onward, the series' visual style was defined by artist Ayami Kojima, whose hand-painted character portraits gave the games their signature gothic elegance. Her detailed, almost ethereal designs for characters like Alucard, Soma Cruz, and Leon Belmont helped elevate Castlevania's atmosphere, making it feel more like a living piece of dark fantasy art rather than just another action game. All of these elements together, the difficulty, the exploration, the iconic soundtrack, are what made Castlevania stand out, and why so many players are still passionate about its return. So, what happened? In 2015, Konami largely stepped away from AAA development, pivoting towards pachinko machines and mobile titles. The series was left dormant for years following Lords of Shadow 2, with the only games being Castlevania pachinko machines that were exclusive to Japan. However, despite the long hiatus, the series didn't vanish completely. In 2019, we got the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, followed by two more collections, the Advanced Collection in 2021, which contained the GBA games, and the Dominus Collection in 2024, which of course had the remaining mainline DS games. These collections are great stuff. They contain both the Western and Japanese releases of all the featured games, one of which we actually never got outside of Japan. The emulator that's included runs very well, features save states, a fantastic CRT filter, and an affordable, accessible way to play almost every mainline Castlevania game. For some reason, and I blame Sony for this, Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night saw a standalone re-released in 2018 exclusively for PlayStation 4. Konami did a similar thing with the Contra series and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, which the latter even received a brand new Legacy sequel. And now with Konami showing renewed interest in other franchises like Silent Hill and Metal Gear, I can't help but ask, why not Castlevania? It feels especially strange today when the Metroidvania genre is more popular than ever. Hollow Knight, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and Metroid Dread proved there's a huge audience for these games. Castlevania, the franchise that helped define the genre, should be leading the way. Instead, the only new content we've seen are crossovers, such as Dead Cells, Vampire Survivors, and Dead by Daylight. Fun cameos, especially Dracula and DBD, that's one of my favorite additions to that game, but far from a real return.
I've known you 2 minutes, and you offer for me to walk the earth like an ordinary peasant, while I give you the knowledge of immortals, the true science.
In 2017, the brand was picked up by Netflix for an animated adaptation. What could have ended up as a cheap tie-in that betrayed the original identity ended up being one of the most beloved video game adaptations ever. It was violent, heartfelt, tragic, and beautiful. Fans who had never touched a Belmont's whip suddenly knew these characters, cared about them, and wanted more. The series is based on Castlevania 3, and its spin-off is based on Rondo of Blood. Both were met with praise from critics and especially fans. They managed to take what was an 8-bit Nintendo game and create a story that's not only tragic and entertaining, but also one that respects the source material it's from. The main characters have been fleshed out from their game counterparts, giving them a different but familiar visual style and personality. Vlad Dracula Tepes himself especially was given a fantastic characterization. Rather than portraying him as a villainous vampire, he's shown to be a quiet, reserved, and broken man after the burning of his wife Lisa. The tragic villain trope can be pretty difficult to pull off correctly, but I believe it was done exceptionally well here. Netflix proved Castlevania still resonates not with just the fans of the games, but newcomers who were introduced to the series via the show. And I believe part of the silence comes down to the timing. Around 2014, producer Koji Igarashi, one of the creative forces behind the series, left Konami during a turbulent period that also saw the fallout with the Metal Gear series director Hideo Kojima. Many fans lost faith in Konami's ability to deliver quality games after what was a difficult year and a huge change in its leadership structure. This is why of recent, I think it makes perfect sense that repackaging the classics was much safer than risking a disappointing new entry in the series. As for Igarashi, he went on to create Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and the two classic Curse of the Moon games. Both capture the spirit of Castlevania, proving the formula still works. But as great as they aren't Castlevania. We still dream of a true sequel, whether that's a separate Symphony of the Night style adventure or a continuation of the DS trilogy. Konami have also recently remade Silent Hill 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3, suggesting legacy remakes/remasters are a safe testing ground before committing to fully new games. Castlevania could be next in line, and the fact they continue to license the IP for crossovers or cameo appearances show the brand still has some value left. The community also keeps the series alive. Fan mods, ROM hacks, and spiritual successors like Bloodstained demonstrate ongoing demand. Meanwhile, indie Metroidvanias like Axiom Verge, Lilies, Blasphemous have filled that gap Castlevania left, proving the genre is thriving even without its originator. Just take a look at Metroid. After a 19-year gap between Metroid Fusion and Metroid Dread, Samus returned in spectacular fashion. Dread wasn't just the best-selling game of the franchise, it was critically acclaimed, praised for its tense atmosphere, intense boss encounters, fluid movement, and modernized design that made exploration more accessible while still preserving the series' signature challenge. It also delivered on Legacy, continuing the story fans had waited nearly 2 decades to see, which made the payoff even more satisfying. More importantly, it proved there's still massive demand for classic franchises when handled with care. If Nintendo could revive Metroid after nearly 2 decades, why couldn't Konami do the same for Castlevania? If Castlevania returned today, what form should it take? The safest route and my personal pick would be a 2D Metroidvania like Dread or Bloodstained, a legacy sequel that introduces the series to a new generation. But Castlevania's gothic world could also thrive in other genres. For example, Souls-likes already borrow heavily from its game design. A Castlevania game in the style of Dark Souls or Lies of P could feel like a natural evolution. So maybe, just maybe, Castlevania's time will come again. Until then, we're left with compilations, crossovers, and spiritual successors. Echoes of one of gaming's most iconic series. Thanks so much for watching my video on Castlevania. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It'll help let Konami and YouTube know you want to see more content like this and a new Castlevania game. Your support helps me make more content like this. With that being said, you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all again next time. Bye-bye!